cannot believe at the water pump where she finally figured things out. That sounds harsh. Where she finally was able to learn what was being taught to her. At this well, Anne Sullivan Macy revealed the mystery of language to 7-year-old Helen Keller by spelling the word water into her hand as water flowed over the other hand. What?
I know you gonna dig this. Get funky with me.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing today? Here I am in Tuscumbia, Alabama. I'm standing outside the birthplace of one of the most influential and inspiring people of the 20th century, Helen Keller. I've been obsessed with the story of Helen Keller since I was a little kid. We studied Helen Keller in school back in Canada, and I had a lot of books about her, and I would go to the library and get out more books. I really had quite a fascination with the story of how she learned to read and write at such a young, at 19 months old, she lost her sight, lost her hearing, and then with the help of the miracle worker, Anne Sullivan, she was soon able to learn how to communicate. It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And here's where she was born, and the water pump where she first discovered what words mean. What's happening? Because she described her life as at sea in a dense fog, I believe is what she said. And water is kind of what the first thing she learned, what it meant. And when she learned that, she didn't stop. She demanded that Anne Sullivan start teaching her everything. Very inspirational woman. And for me, here in Tuscumbia, Alabama, I've always wanted to get here. It's a little off the main roads, and I've never been able to get here until now. Let's go in, take a look around, and see what they have to say.
This home was built in 1820. So this year it is 203 years old. It was the second home in Tuscumbia, and originally it was on 640 acres. We have 10 acres today. Helen's grandparents built this home. They came from Virginia, David and Mary Keller. English ivy was growing everywhere, so they named their home Ivy Green and raised a family here. Now, this was the second home in Tuscumbia, and at that time it looked like a big farm. They had barns, gardens, orchards, outbuildings, farm animals. Everything was made, raised, or grown right here. It stayed in the Keller family for years and years, and that's why we have so much that's original. About 85% of the items are original, a lot of the furniture, but we have clothing, we have knitting, we have quilts, we have things that belong to Helen still in the cottage today. The nails in the floor were made by a blacksmith in 1820. They said when the blacksmith would make a nail, it would take about 4 minutes to make one nail. So nails were a big deal in 1820. This is Helen's father. He grew up in this home. His parents built it. His name was Arthur Keller. He became a captain in the Confederate Army, so that was his title. Here in town, he was an attorney. He was editor of the local newspaper called the North Alabamian, and he also was a farmer. His first wife was named Sarah. They had 2 boys, James and Simpson. Sarah got sick and died after 10 years of marriage, leaving him with 2 children. So in about a year's time, he married Kate Adams from Memphis, Tennessee. He and Kate had 3 children. Helen was their first. When he married Kate, he decided to have the little cottage next door furnished to be their bedroom. And that's why Helen was born in the cottage. She was born June 27th, 1880. Everything was perfect with Helen up until 19 months. That's when she ran a very high fever that left her completely deaf, completely blind. More modern doctors said probably it was scarlet fever or maybe meningitis, but they called it brain fever. In the following years, Helen's behavior became quite terrible. She was very, very frustrated. She was very spoiled. Everybody felt sorry for her, but she was described as looking and acting almost like a little wild animal. When she was 6 years old, the second baby in the family was born, a little girl named Mildred. That's Mildred after they were grown with Helen. Helen was really jealous of this new baby, and she walked in and turned the cradle over with the baby in it one day. And that shocked and scared the family. And they said, we must find help for Helen somewhere. They learned of an eye specialist in Baltimore, Maryland. He was doing things no one else had done. They took Helen to see him. He could not help, but he referred them to Alexander Graham Bell. The inventor of the first telephone was a teacher of the deaf. He lived in Canada, but he often came to Washington, D.C., and that's where Helen met him when she was 6 years old, and they were lifelong friends. But he's the one that told the family Helen needs a teacher, not a doctor. And he had them write a letter to Perkins School for the Blind, hoping someone from Perkins might come here. Perkins is near Boston. It's in Watertown, Massachusetts. But that's how Annie Sullivan ended up coming here. She had graduated from Perkins School for the Blind. No family, no money, needed a job. The letter had come from the Kellers, so they asked Annie about becoming a teacher. They came to her at the poorhouse and said, Annie, there's a blind and deaf 6-year-old little girl in Tuscumbia, Alabama. The family, the Kellers, need a teacher. They will pay you $25 a month plus free room and board. And in that time period, that was a lot of money. Right. So the Kellers, of course, they told Annie, I bet, I always laugh, I bet Annie thought, where in the world is Tuscumbia, Alabama?
Right.
She had never been anywhere in her life, but she bought the ticket. Wrong kind of train ticket. It stopped at every train station between Boston and Tuscumbia. But she finally arrived, met Helen March 3rd, 1887. She said she didn't know the world was this big. She had had on the same hot wool dress for 3 days. But Helen was 6 years old when Annie came here, and Annie was 20. They shared the bedroom that you'll see when you go upstairs. There's 2 bedrooms. The boys were in the first one. Trunk room in the middle was for sewing and storage. One of their travel trunks is up there, and then a lot of original clothing. Then the bedroom on the left, that's the one Helen and Annie shared. Helen was not happy that this person was unpacking in her room, and she wrote in her own book that she noticed the key was left in the bedroom door and thought it would be a good idea to lock this person up. So she said, I turned the key and I pulled it out and I hid it under a big piece of furniture. When the family realized that the new young teacher was locked up in the bedroom upstairs, no one could find the key, and they had to bring a tall ladder from the barn and put up to the window that you'll see, and that's the window Annie climbed out of on the first day of her first job.
Right, Is this the master bedroom?
Yes. This is the master bedroom. When Helen was 5, she was sleeping upstairs and the parents were in here. The clothes you see are all original. They're mostly Helen's. Some things were her mother's. Boots would go until they could be cleaned.
Yes. Boot closet.
Boot closet. When Annie came, she gave Helen a doll that was sent from the children at Perkins. When she gave her the doll, she used the finger spelling, the manual alphabet, and spelled D-O-L-L into Helen's hand.
Right.
Helen surprised her by spelling it back into her hand. She copied that immediately. For the next 1 month and 2 days, Annie had her touch numerous objects. Each time Annie would spell the name of the object, and Helen would copy it. Helen thought it was a game they were playing. But when they got to the pump that you'll see in the back, and she felt the cool, wet something flowing over her hands, she later wrote, she said it brought back a misty memory of Wawa. And that's what she had called water at 19 months.
Right.
So it was this revelation. She said it was like a door opened in my mind. I suddenly realized that all these things we're touching, this person's trying to let me know it has a name. And if everything has a name, I have a way I can talk with my hands. Helen ran all over the property wanting to know what everyone's name was. And by the end of that day, she knew 30 words.
Wow.
By the end of summer, she knew over 600 words. She started learning how to read Braille. She mastered Braille by age 10. They did later realize Helen was high-level genius. They think her IQ was 160, so she was quite brilliant. No wonder she accomplished all she did. Annie taught her everything she could at home, and then together they went to Perkins School for the Blind, schools for the deaf in Boston and New York, Cambridge School for Girls in Boston, and then at 20 she said, I want to go to college. This is her picture when she graduated from Radcliffe College. In that time period, boys went to Harvard, girls went to Radcliffe. And she graduated with honor in 4 years. First deafblind in the world to have a college degree. Annie sat beside her in class and listened to the lectures and spelled them into her hands. Very few Braille textbooks, so she would have to read assignments into her hands as well.
She got her own education
Yes,
too,
she
and now
did.
the second one.
And later, they gave her an honorary degree.
Right, good.
The picture here is of the 3 ladies that spent their whole lives together. This is Helen, the teacher Annie, and the secretary Polly Thompson. These are their these are their signatures. We have several things with Helen's original handwriting. She used a little wooden writing board device that would lay on top of the paper, and it kept it straight, and she could feel where to put the letters. Annie stayed with Helen 50 years. She came here at age 20, died at age 70 in 1936. She died a long time before Helen.
I know. Yeah.
But they had hired Polly Thompson to be their secretary, and Polly had learned to be a companion, so she was both. Polly was with her 46 years, and then she died in 1960. Helen died June 1st, 1968. If she had lived 26 more days, she would have been 88. Her birthday is June 27th, and she died on the 1st. All 3 of these ladies are entombed in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. In fact, Annie was honored to be the very first female entombed in the National Cathedral. So I always think about where she began in life and then to be honored that way. In her book, that when she was 5 years old, her mother had gone into the pantry, and she said, that's when I learned what keys were for. The door was left shut too, and the key was in the door. So she said, I turned the key. I went out and sat on the porch and giggled for over 2 hours. She said, I could not hear my mother, but I could feel the vibrations from all her pounding and kicking, and she said it was very entertaining.
What a little,
She was something.
Yeah.
This is the room where Annie taught Helen how to sit and eat like everyone else.
Wow.
When Annie came, she was very surprised that Helen wandered the room and put her hands in people's plates. She would smell something on your plate she wanted, she would take it, eat with 2 hands, eat noisily. The family was used to this. They didn't think anything about it. Annie thought it was just awful.
Right.
And so soon after Annie arrived, they were having breakfast. All that began as usual. Annie blocked her every time she'd reach to take something from her plate, and when Helen persisted, Annie slapped her on top of the hand. She popped her hand real firmly. And that shocked Helen, and it shocked the family that this new young teacher had popped their little girl on the hand. And they questioned her, what are you doing? And she said, I'm not accustomed to people eating out of my plate. And Captain Keller said, well, we are, let her be. Don't get her upset. There's no problem here. we want to enjoy our meal and have peace and quiet and conversation. But Annie was quite feisty, and she had a speech ready for the family and told them that Helen was ruling the household. No one expected anything of her. And she said, "You've hired me to be a teacher, and that's going to require some discipline. And I would like to begin her education right now if you'll get up and leave the dining room." So, yeah, she was a firecracker.
And did they get up and leave?
They left.
Good for
Everybody
her.
was very upset, but they were desperate for help. And I understand Captain Keller was quite upset. He didn't really appreciate this little 20-year-old coming in here telling him what to do. But they all got up and left, and Annie closed these 2 doors, and they literally slapped and kicked and chased and turned over furniture, and food was everywhere, drink was everywhere. It was a fight. It was like 2 little bulls. Neither would give in, and it went on all morning.
Really?
But she finally wore her down, held her in the chair, got her to put the food in her mouth with a spoon, had her pick up the cup, drink from it, lay it back on the table, and even folded her napkin. So she had learned in one day the process of eating at the table.
That's incredible.
Oh yeah, they said the room was a wreck and it was a late lunch.
Like that.
This is the mold that was used to make this column.
I don't think I even noticed that I was up there when I was there. Oh, wow.
And that's the order of service for her funeral that was held there. And that's an 1877 copy of her father's paper. Here it says A.H. Keller, editor and proprietor.
Wow, look at that.
There's an ice house. That's that little odd structure out there, but that was built back several years ago because the Kellers had an ice house. They gathered ice in the winter and stored it in the ice house. It was like their refrigerator.
Right.
And then when you get to the cottage, you'll look in the front door and this little side door. When you pull the storm doors back, you can see everything. It's amazing to me what's still out there after all these decades. Things that belong to Helen are still out there.
In that building there?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
They're still out there, and the furnishings are original. So Helen was born out there, and then later that's where Annie took her to get control of the bad behavior.
Oh, so she was born in that little cottage right there.
Right.
Wow.
The family, after the incident in the dining room, Annie wanted to take Helen away from the family to get control of her behavior.
Right. Rail writer.
Did you go to the Capitol when you were in Washington?
Her, the firstborn, her eyes are infected, nasty, filthy bacteria, no money for medicine. Mom dies from TB after the 3rd baby's born. Jimmy had the TB tuberculosis hip from mom's TB. Newborn baby was taken in for potato farmers. Dad just was disintegrates. Kids are abandoned. Her and Jimmy, her 11, him 5. He's crippled, can't walk. She's going blind. Dumped him in a inland sand pile of courthouse down 2 schools. 3 months later, Jimmy dies there, so that's the memories you see in the movie from Annie. She remembers the brother there. 3 years later, they're 14 years old. So it's time for this kid in there.
And this was Helen's room.
So I want Mark Reed to get me out there. Walks into a complete stranger and showed up, checking on the structure of the building. And they
This is incredible.
child bed in a place like that. And her
Helen Keller's bedroom. So here we are out back now, and I cannot believe at the water pump where she finally figured things out. That sounds harsh. Where she finally was able to learn what was being taught to her. At this well, Anne Sullivan Macy revealed the mystery of language to 7-year-old Helen Keller by spelling the word water into her hand as water flowed over the other hand. What? It's crazy. What comes out of here? Isn't that wild? It's the back of the house. Not a big house. Not as. Well, I don't know what I expected. I'm just kind of in shock of seeing all this because it's something, like I said, I read a lot about Helen Keller as a kid. I found her story fascinating. That's why when I went to see Matthew Shepard at the National Cathedral, I made a point. Of course, Helen Keller's right there, but I made a point to point that out. About Helen Keller being there as well. Look at this. Yikes. Wow. Oh, jeez. Okay, we're good. So this is where she was actually born, right in here. Like I said, there's a little statue of her here, too. Statue in the garden. Is that her? I don't think so. I think it's just some sort of cherub. So she was born here. Inside. Let's take a look. See what we can see. Helen Keller was born in this room. What? The video's not technically over yet, but I'm staying on the cottage deck right here. And I just want to say thanks everybody for watching. Love you all. This, for me, coming here is a big deal, just because of how much, I've said it a million times, how much I read about Helen Keller, how much I admire her, and how much I mythical figure to me growing up, kid in Canada, it's Helen Keller. And then, unfortunately, with growing up as a kid, Helen Keller, there's the Helen Keller jokes. And I'm sure there will probably be some in the comments. You don't need to. It's all good. We've heard them all before. And so you heard those as a kid. But I was so fascinated by her story. I'm going to walk along, show you some more stuff as we leave. And it's been a dream come true. Thank you to Lynn, the tour guide here at Helen Keller's birthplace and childhood home. Water. All right. Thanks for watching, everybody. And sorry about the noise in the background. There's the family visiting. They just moved here from very far away. And the kids, I think, were a little restless, but they were adorable. But, yeah, and I'll show you some more things on the way out. Wow, this is amazing. Yeah, peace out. Some regular houses out back. People live right here, right around the property. We'll walk over here. I'm not sure what else we have to see. Whatever building that is, if it's closed. Go down here. Oh, I thought there were people over there talking. I think, it's Helen Keller's speech. Right, I thought there was people over here. I was waiting. Of the blind. Hand-carved gateway by the Maori people, presented by the Lions of New Zealand.
I hope you will adopt me. I am the youngest here, and what I offer you is full of splendid opportunity for service. Try to imagine how you would feel if you were suddenly stricken blind today. Picture yourself fumbling and groping at noonday